Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is SewRena, and in today's video I'm going to be sewing up a two-piece dress or a suit, whichever you want to call it. This was supposed to be my New Year's Eve outfit. Well, I was very hopeful that it would be, but of course I didn't finish it in time. In fact, I just finished it recently and I'm about to try it on to do the reveal. So thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. This is going to be another chatty one on a topic that is kind of important to me, or something that I've been thinking about recently. I feel like at the beginning of the year it's so easy to do a whole bunch of reflecting, so that's what I've been doing, and so I will be reflecting out loud with you guys while I make this outfit. So if you're interested in a little intimate peek into my brain, go ahead and like and subscribe, and now let's get into the patterns I'll be using as well as the materials. For today's patterns, I'm using two. I'm using Simplicity 1764 for the jacket. I really love that collar with the little bow. It's super cute. And I'm going to pair it with my skirt S3076. I've made this several times before on my channel. Leftover holiday delusions had me thinking I was going to be able to get this outfit done in time for New Year's, but I did not. So I didn't film the making of the jacket. I used some scrap dark green velvet, and I thought it would pair really well with the jacket brocade. I kind of wanted this to be fur, but I couldn't find any vintage fur that was affordable and kind of damaged for me to cut up, and I didn't want to use any of the faux fur because it's just a mess. I wanted the jacket to be a wearable muslin because the way that it attaches to the shoulder, it's an attached sleeve, but it doesn't look like it. It almost looks inset. And so usually I do this type of thing offline anyway before I figure out what I'm doing, and then I do a demonstration later. So I'm just going to sew this up and have a little chatty video like I've been doing recently because I'm enjoying them a lot, and I enjoy reading all your comments. And if you're thinking this is a very fancy wearable muslin, you would be correct. Only Joann's had this brocade on sale for 11 something a yard, and then I had a $10 reward, so I ended up spending $20 for all the fabric that I have. Today's topic is about how not fitting in and not meeting society's beauty standards really allowed me the freedom to step out and kind of present myself in the way that I wanted to. I think it's human nature to want to fit in, and in my case, kind of be ignored. It's obvious that I don't meet Western beauty standards. Like, I'm not European, I don't have straight hair, I don't have thin, small features apart from like my overall size, things of that nature, right? But then I also don't fit African American standards of beauty either because I'm too skinny. And no matter the group of people, people have always gone out of their way to tell me how skinny I am and how they felt about the way that I looked. Whether they were applauding it, which most of the time they were not, or they felt like I was unhealthy, needed to eat, like anything that you could think about calling or saying to a thinner person, I have heard it. I think because my size already drew unwanted attention like throughout my entire life, I wanted to blend in as much as possible, which is why I stopped wearing vintage when I was like in elementary school. I always say in interviews and things like that that I really love the 70s, and the first time I started dressing vintage I was much younger and I was dressing 1970s, but then as I got older I realized sticking out didn't really suit, like it wasn't the best idea. So then I started to conform a little, but it had to do with more than just the way that I looked, but also like, you know, I didn't want people constantly talking about my size, which is something that I've dealt with literally my entire life. Fast forward way into adulthood, a couple years after I had my first child, I had lost a bunch of weight. Like obviously I was always skinny, but naturally skinny. But then I started breastfeeding around the clock full time exclusively, and I lost so much more weight. Like I didn't look any skinnier, but I definitely lost more weight. I was an overproducer too, so I was just making milk all the freaking time. So yeah, I had lost a ton of weight, nothing was fitting properly, and then I felt even worse than before. So I decided that now was the time to start dressing vintage because I had to wear a new wardrobe anyway. And that's when I fell in love with like the fit and flare of the 50s. Back up, I didn't lose a bunch of weight, I lost a lot of inches. I hope that makes sense. I've never fluctuated in weight, so my words for describing this doesn't really make much sense, but on the scale I was the same, but my clothes didn't fit. I can't say that I was feeling confident when I first started dressing vintage, but I definitely felt better wearing garments that I knew I truly wanted to wear. And at this point I was able to rationalize wanting to wear what I wanted to wear because I was like, I already don't meet beauty standards, and now I've lost any kind of like progress I would have had, right? Like my butt grew a little, but then I gave birth, and my boobs were big, but that's because they were full of milk, and it was just like anything that would have made me the standard was kind of temporary until I stopped breastfeeding. Maybe subconsciously in the past I was trying to meet beauty standards or hope that one day they would change enough that I would fit in. I don't even know, because I don't know that I gave it that much thought. But I do know the moment that I realized, like, hey, I don't meet any of these standards, so therefore I don't even need to try. I remember that part. I don't remember wanting to meet it, but I remember when I completely was just like, I already don't, so what's the point? I was drawn to the full skirts, and this camouflaged how small I really was underneath the garments, and that made me so happy because for the first time in my life I would go out into the world and people saw my garments, they saw everything else besides how small I was, and that made me really happy. After a couple of years, I got really comfortable with going out in the world wearing a garment that made me feel beautiful and not having comments about my body, that I think that the full skirt and like just a fit and flared dress became sort of a shield. The lines between it being my favorite style just because of the style and the protection it offered me became a little bit blurred. I really loved that I had more control over my proportions when I wore a full skirted dress. Like, obviously I could make the skirt as big as I wanted and things like that. Like, I could really draw the eye away from just my overall silhouette being so straight. Now, I love a pencil skirt, pencil dress, those slim fitted wiggle dresses. I love them all and I always have, but whenever I would make them and put them on, I never felt that great about being out in the world wearing them. I didn't do any specific work other than just constantly wearing them. I feel like I'm really good at just like exposure therapy, because I feel like the more I do things, the more used to it I get. And I have fallen in love with these types of skirts. I also love that they require the least amount of fabric to make, and I feel so confident and so beautiful when I wear both. And now the fit and flare has become more than just a shield. It could just be one of my favorite styles again, and that makes me really happy. I'm really happy for the growth, although I'm not quite sure how I came to this, because again, I didn't work on myself to get here. I just am here. I've been told a lot recently that people admire me for just being myself, and it has me thinking a lot, like, why am I so much like myself? And it really just dawned on me that I never really fit into anyone's standards, and I was always sticking out, and so at least now I stick out on my own terms. I also realized that I've never had a problem with my body or the way that I look, and I wouldn't change a thing. I just didn't like people constantly talking about it. There's never been a time in my life where I didn't want to dress vintage. Like I said, I've always wanted to dress this way, but it does make me think, if I were to have fit beauty standards, would I have ever felt the need to go out of my comfort zone and just learn to sew or do any of this? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like sticking out and not fitting in really gave me the edge I needed to just do what I wanted. I still get criticized to this day, probably more so now than ever before, because I decided to put myself online, but it's so much easier to deal with as myself than when I was cosplaying a normal person. And this is the final look. I used black accessories because I was hoping it would be a good contrast to the dark green velvet, so it's obvious that it's a dark green velvet and not black. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to my thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. If you would like to support me any further, you can leave me a virtual tip on Ko-fi or become a bobbin over on Patreon. We would absolutely love to have you. Until next time, bye!